Okay, so today we're going to talk about the publishing workflow, and I believe that all of us as the content author or even marketer who using Sitecore, we are very familiar with the content workflows that that will help us to actually manage our content when we will publish some change to the website, and usually content author will actually ask ourselves or even our college, asking like, so who's going to write the content and who's going to approve for the content before it's go into the, the live site. And of course that the content always need to have visibility compatible, and it's always need to be aligned with some internal and external regulations. And of course that we do need a workflow to actually get it through the approvers, and then after getting all the approval, the content now is ready to be published. And today I would like to start with the workflow best practice. And the best practice is, I would say, and I would strongly suggest every Sitecore user or any Sitecore content author that we should have launched a website with a very, very well-defined workflow. Because it's very hard to, like launching with a website without any workflow, and then later on you let someone to, learn it. Let's say you start a website as Nancy said, Enbridge just has the Sitecore website made 2 years ago, and let's say a new website doesn't have any workflow, and now at the moment we have some new trainee, we have some new content author, and they come in, and then we see the needs of having workflow, and then we have to actually go back to all the previous or legacy content and then start giving them workflow, and then we having workflow for even like newer content. So that's a very, very hard thing to do. So that's like that's why I said the best practice, the first one is we need to have the workflow ready when we first launch the website. And the second one is we do need to have a staging step in our workflow. Saying that, mean we do need to have an environment ready, and also have a step in our workflow for the approver to check the content. As like non-technical people, we don't want to give them a hard time. We just open Sitecore, log into Sitecore, and then navigate through maybe 1,000 content items just to look at the new change. So that's why we should set up an environment, like a very and user-friendly one, and then we should have a step in our workflow to just give them an opportunity to review the content before they go live. And the third one that I came up with today is we do need to use our old Sitecore workflow. It's good. Sitecore already provided some out of the box workflow. It's a Sitecore called sample workflow, and it's very basic. But I would suggest, and I think it's it's good for everyone to every organization have their own workflow, have their own regulation, and also their your external and maybe it may involve some external team as well. So you may need to actually tweak your workflow to make it your very friendly to your team. And that's so those are the three best practices that I want to raise up today before we go into the actual workflow and workbox content. So here in the Sitecore Launchpad, if we usually start with it, I would go into the workflow first, and you can see here, if I go into the content editor view, we have, this is a content tree, and if you go all the way to system, and then you will see the workflow item. Under workflow item, you will see we have here 5 different out-of-the-box workflows, and it depends on uh, how you want, how your organizations are actually set up. We can actually, just use a sample workflow that Sitecore provided, or you can actually create your own one. And um, of course, that when we talk about workflow, I want to introduce four different items that we may need if we want to have a workflow. So firstly, this is the workflow, a workflow item that will this is like a the head of a tree, and then under that we will have the state. So state here, usually we will have the draft state, we have the waiting for approval state, and we also have the approved state. So this is 3 different state of the of any content item that Sitecore has. And of course, you may have like more than that. You may have waiting for approval, and then maybe after that we may have a state between waiting for approval and approve, which is waiting to be published. So we can have 4 states, but it depends on your organization. And under state, we will have a command. So a command will this is like choosing yes or no after the state. So let's say in the draft state, usually I will have only one command, which is submit. So if you finish your draft item and you want to make it ready for the approver to verify the change, you need a command to submit the content to the next state, which is moving the content from a draft state to a approval state. And it's also the same case for other states here. Let's say I have approved, and this command will move the content from approval state to waiting for approval state to approved state. And a reject, we actually move the content back to the draft state for maybe the content author to refine their change. And under the command, you will have some, maybe it can be a sub action, it can be a sub command, or it can be a validations. So we actually create validation action for Sitecore to check against the content that you change. And this is very good for any content author or marketer. Like every time we want to publish something, we always want to check it against something. When you check against maybe, so here I'm having a validation action. So it will say, so this validation action is only for just to check if the content item has any errors. So sometimes we may have, for accessibility matter, we may need, all the images must have an alternative text, or we may have some very, very important fields that we don't want it to be missing before we deploy it to the live site. So we want to create those validation action to check against the content. And yep, so we have 4 different states. We have 4 different types of how can I say, like, elements under the workflow. We have the state, we have the command, and we have the validation, and we may have a sub command as well. Okay, so based on the sample workflow that we're seeing right here, we have 3 different states, and the item, when it's first created until it's actually ready to publish, it will have 3 different states: draft, waiting for approval, and approved. So I will actually show you the whole workflow. by um, by an example I'm having right here. So this is a page that I created just to 1 hour right for this, and this is for our demo. So this item have two versions, and the version 1 is already published live. And this is the version 2, and everything I change is just this image. So I can go back to the version 1, and you will see this is the only change that I made. This is the image that I have in version 1. Okay, and whenever I have this new item ready, what I need to do is I will go to review. Okay, let me just do it from scratch so everyone can follow. Okay, so let's say I create a new version, add a new one. So last time we said we can use this button to actually create a version 3, and this is a new image, and I will actually change this image to another one. Let's say here. Okay, I click select, and then from here we can go to the review tab on the ribbons. So you will see this item is currently in the draft state, and we have the submit button. This will move the item from the draft state to the waiting for approval state. Click submit. Of course, I need to save the change, and okay, this is just the environment message. Okay, the item has been moved to a different workflow. So I call with a reload item. Okay. And so usually as the content author, I will not have, all the permission to actually move the, like seeing all the like all the action of a workflow. But because I'm using administrator, so now I can actually submit a change and then approve the change and also like publish the change. Usually we will have different roles in our teams. We may have a content author, we have the approver, and we have maybe director of the who actually like approve for all the content. So let's say I'm just submitted as a content author. So and now I will switch my role to the content approver. And how do I know that which item in Sitecore that I is waiting for approval? So I will log into my account, of course, and then I will have the workbox. You see the workbox right here. Click on that, and here you will see that we have like a workflow list right here. So we can choose which workflow that you want to view the items. So it depends on let's say you're a marketing approver, so you may have different item that waiting for you under the analytics workflow. But if you are content manager, so you may want to just focus on the sample workflow. So when I click on that, it will show you all the content that being assigned aside with that sample workflow. So click on that. So if you have lots of pages, of course you can actually choose to choose how many items are going to show on one screen. You can refresh it. If someone just came to your desk and say, hey, we should submit a new item, can you just refresh your page to see the newest item? And under here we have the sample workflow tab. If we have many different workflow, they may have many different tabs right here. So just remove that back here, and so we have a different status right here. So we have draft. Anything under draft? No. If we have anything under the waiting for approval state, yes, for item. So if we show you all the item that you are you're prompt to approve. So if you this is the item name, the version, and the language version, and the content versions. And also you can actually preview the item by clicking here. It will bring you to the page. If it's a page, with the preview mode. If it's not a page, if it's not a page that says it's a video file, when you click on it, it will just tell you this item doesn't have the layout. So do you want to decide to will build a web page instead? That means it's going to bring you to the page that containing that that item. You can actually open the file or the item. So you click on I open, you will see all the fields of the item as you see in content editor. And then you can actually check the difference between the versions. So as we mentioned this before, we can see the difference between two different versions, version 1, version 3. Okay, so for pages, you will have another option right here. Beside the normal approve action, you can approve it with a text. So I also mentioned that in the previous webinar, you can actually create tests for the page with different versions. So Sitecore will running the test on the live side and giving you some feedback back from the test to let you know that which version is better and which version has the better conversion rates. And you can reject your the content as well. So let's say I'm already, you know, agreed with, I mean, I already reviewed this content. I want to approve it. Then what do? You can just click approve, and of course that here you can also approve all or reject all. You can actually approve with selection or reject with such selections. So let's say I can just approve, reject this selection, and then I will approve this selection, okay? And as I said earlier, because this sample workflow have the validation assigned to it, and if we validate the file for you to see if there's any fields that not comply with your requirements. So we say, okay, so this fields must have an alt text, and it doesn't have, so it show you a red dot right here, but you can actually ignore it. But then it will not approve the content until the content author actually go back to the item and then make the change and fix that error. Okay, so this is the one of the way that you can approve the content. The second way of doing it is if you know exactly where the item is located in the content tree. As the content approver or content manager, I can actually just go right to the item, and then as the content approver, I will have 3 options right here. The same one that we saw in the workbox. It can be approved if we approve with the text, or it can be rejected. So I say approve. I approve the content, and just give the content author some comments saying like good job. Okay. If you also validate the content, and we have so even a content manager, I believe that everyone can make mistakes, and because we make mistakes, we should have validation that ready in place for inside code just to help it out. So now the validation said, even I say good job is there's a field that's missing the alt text. So what should I do? I can actually okay, you can approve an item with validation error. Okay. So I can either just do it myself, or I can just ask a content author to do it for me. I will just click property and maybe add the alt text right here to women checking selfie. Okay. Okay, disappear. Save. Okay, now I will approve it again. Okay, you can just say, add the alt text for the image view. Okay. Okay, done. So now this item is ready to be published because we already approved it. So there's a tip in my agenda. I said tips because so sometime we will want to know that what state of this current version that I'm looking at. There's a way to look at it, and let me just go to version 2, which we didn't approve yet. So if you go to the view tab and there's a standard views checkbox, if you check that, Sitecore will give, let me just do this first. I will uncheck it. So usually Sitecore will only provide you with some essential fields that content author need to see. But if you want to see more configuration and settings of that item, you can click on the standard views and you will see that our view will expand with more options right here. And one of the options is a workflow. Click on that. You will see the actual workflow of this item. So this item is being assigned with a sample workflow, and the default workflow of this item and all the similar item, the template with the same template is using this sample workflow. And you can see the state of this item itself. So this item is in a state of waiting for approval. And if you left click on it, you actually see the drop down menu with all the action that you see in the workflow. Okay. And the other way to know that what is the state of this item is you can actually scroll up, and on the top of it, it will give you an error message saying if you publish now, a selected version will not be visible on the website. And if you're seeing this, then you know that, oh, so this version of this content item is not being approved yet. So then there's some action we need to take. So that is the second way that you know that that this version of this content is ready to be published or not. And yeah, I think that will conclude my workflow webinar. The demo today, and we will go into the Q&A section.